We've all been there. You buy or make a beautiful succulent arrangement, and then after a while, it starts to look bad. Whether the stems get too long, the leaves start to look diseased. In this video, I'm gonna help you diagnose what's wrong and get your succulent arrangement looking beautiful once again. Watching this channel, there's a good chance that you're a fan of succulents like me, and a lot of times we get these beautiful succulent arrangements, whether we make them ourselves or purchase them, and eventually they start to look a little bit bad. Whether they start getting a little overgrown, a little ragged, sometimes they get pest problems. Succulents are living, breathing plants, so they grow, they change. So every so often you will have to go back and make adjustments to your succulent arrangement to keep it looking good and to keep it looking fresh and healthy. Now, this is a great example of one. I actually created this succulent arrangement in another video. I received a shipment of lots of different types of echeverias. They were much smaller when I received them. So now they're getting a little bit crowded. It's just not looking that good and that healthy. So I'm gonna go in and I'm going to basically take this arrangement apart, deal with the pest issues, deal with any dead leaves, give it some fresh soil, and make it look like new again. So I actually have two succulent arrangements here, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about as far as sometimes they get a little overgrown. That stem is not looking very good. This looks like it has a pest issue. It's otherwise healthy, but it's just not looking that pretty. Here in this arrangement here, this succulent is big and beautiful. However, if you take a look, there are little pest issues, and this is a little bit of a tricky one because this succulent has farina, which is this kind of white covering, and if I touch that too much, it's gonna come off. I don't wanna get it covered with fingerprints, but I'm sure there's a lot of leaves down below that could be removed. This one in particular, you can see it's covered in pests, so I want to deal with those pests, and it looks like it might be even suffering from another kind of disease, whether it's just the mealybugs that I see in there or if there's something else, possibly spider mites. We'll see. This one, this echeveria was doing really well, and actually I have children, and a wiffle ball was thrown and it knocked it off, and I popped it back into the soil and I kept the stem, but it looks kind of lost in there. The soil used to have gravel over it to keep it looking prettier, and I did actually have 3 succulents on here. I removed one because it was suffering from powdery mildew, and I didn't want it to affect these other plants. And then here as well, there's definitely some kind of pest and disease going on here, and these are just way overcrowded. So when I received these plants, they were much smaller. They've now grown. So I know I have mealybug problems with my succulents. So one of the first steps I'm gonna take is to get rid of the mealybugs. One way you could do that is you can create, if you have a spray bottle, this is 70% rubbing alcohol. So you mix this with 1 part alcohol, 1 part water. So like say 1 cup of alcohol, 1 cup of water. And that does do a pretty good job of getting rid of mealybugs. There's also insecticidal super soap. You could try neem oil. This one has peppermint. I did notice there's also a little bit of a fungus issue on my succulents. So I'm gonna deal with the fungus issue, but it's important to get rid of the mealybugs first because they could also be bringing on the fungus issue. Mealybugs create this stuff called honeydew, which is really sticky, and a lot of funguses stick to that honeydew and then cause damage to the leaves. This is a different succulent. These have bit of what's called sooty mold fungus on them, and that's because they had honeydew dripped all over the leaves, and then the sooty mold is attached to the honeydew. So you have to first treat the insect or pest issue, and then you can address the fungus issue. I'm just using what I have to hand, but I've also been recommended using a systemic pest control that gets rid of the pest from the inside out. But for now, this is what I have to hand, and I'm going to use the rubbing alcohol and water method. Then once those mealybugs are gone, I'm going to either use something like a copper fungicide, or I've also found the sulfur. This is just sulfur powder. I've found this to be really effective on some of the succulent issues that I've had lately. I've given this an initial spray, but really I do want to take everything out. And then also there's so many little nooks and crannies in this plant, and there's probably some leaves I could remove. So that's my next step, is to remove these plants and take out any dead leaves and really get in the nooks and crannies with my pest control and clean them up that way. So I've found having little succulent tools like these are really helpful when you are working with succulents, whether you're planting them for the first time or removing them from an arrangement. The beauty of succulents as well is if you damage the roots, it doesn't really matter because they'll grow new roots. They'll happily grow from having no roots. So that could also be one way to really refresh them, is to remove all the roots. We'll keep them for now. And as you can see, there's a lot of dead leaves. We really want to clean this up. It'll make this plant much happier. This one in particular seems to have a major issue and it's not looking that good. So we don't even want this as part of this arrangement. I'm going to put this in my little succulent hospital and revive it, make it look much better. Uh-oh. Now, look at this. I knew something was wrong. As I pull on that, the leaves are just falling off, which is the sign of a major problem. So we'll carefully pull this out and we'll see if we can revive this plant. The center is looking pretty healthy, so I'm not too worried, and this one should come out pretty easily. As mentioned, this was knocked off and it was just the head of the succulent and it was a little cutting, and sure enough, look at those nice healthy roots. So there you go, look at that. There is definitely something really bothering this plant. I see a lot of mealybugs, but it could be something else like a disease or even a caterpillar. All of these I'm gonna throw away. I often talk about keeping succulent leaves, but these are fully diseased and dead. So here's my big one, and I believe the name of this is Echeveria crispate beauty, and it is pretty happy in this dish. It's looking healthy. It has some minor pest issues, but there's a lot of leaves underneath as it grows up that I haven't been able to access to get rid of. So we're just gonna gently pull it out of this pot here. I can feel all those dead leaves that need to be removed. There we go. Pretty healthy, not too bad. I'm not going to do anything major to this plant, but it looks like, I can't tell if those are spider webs or spider mites. Oh no, it's a spider web. There, I can see the spider in there. Spiders are actually kind of good, so I don't necessarily want to get rid of that, but we will clean this plant up. And while I'm here, I'm also going to reset this little succulent pot. You can see this stem is damaged and the plant is actually trying to replant itself here. So I'll show you what we do with this kind of a plant. But for now, we'll also pull these out. It just comes out as one piece. And interestingly, you can see where this was potted up before. It's so solid, and I think this plant would be happier if I kind of break that up. You can actually see there's some healthy roots inside there. Get rid of any dead leaves and any of these lower leaves. So I've got a lot of soil here, and this soil doesn't look too bad, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of stir it up, remove any roots, and make sure the soil is nice and healthy and not hydrophobic, meaning if you water it, just the water slides past. The soil, you want the soil to be able to take on the water, to soak the water, but also a succulent soil shouldn't maintain too much moisture. It wants to be really well draining, sandy, and then there's some decorative rocks that have now made it into this. So I'm going to stir this up and maybe take out half the soil and add some new fresh soil to it. So our soil is looking lovely and fluffy, and I've removed a lot of the roots. We're going to take this away and we're going to take a look at our plants, and we're going to get them really nice and cleaned up and ready to be replanted. And we're also going to check them for the various issues that sometimes cause your arrangements to look bad. So this is a pretty healthy looking echeveria. There's no major issues with it. It just has some dry leaves. So I'm going to remove those. It's a lot easier to remove them with these little tweezers. A lot of these come with these sort of succulent tool kits. You usually get tweezers, trowels, little clippers, all kind of little miniature stuff to deal with your succulents. There are some, maybe a couple excess leaves. These are healthy leaves, so I'm going to gently twist and pull these and try not to damage them, because I can reuse these to propagate new plants from. So that's looking pretty nice and healthy. I'm going to set it aside. So any leaf that you don't really see from the top and is starting to get hidden, I'm going to remove those. And now I'm going to look at this echeveria, which does look to have serious issues. So it had a lot of visible mealybugs at the top, and a lot of these leaves just started falling off and looked very diseased. So I use my tweezers, pull off the dead leaves, and kind of investigate what is going on in here. Sometimes it's something like a little caterpillar gets in there, or maybe it's just a really bad mealybug infestation. See all these little white dots? Those are for sure mealybugs. And now that this plant has been taken out, it's not looking very pretty. I don't want to put this back into an arrangement. I'm going to set this aside into my succulent hospital, so to speak, to let it recover. Again, with these, we're going to kind of remove any soil that is looking a little hydrophobic, meaning the moisture is not really getting in there, and remove any of those dead leaves with my tools. So all these roots, well, they're not unhealthy. I don't think it's really helping the plant. And these bigger roots are looking good, but they're kind of extra. So I'm actually just gonna pull them off and get this plant down to just its main roots. This looks like it did, it's yellow because it's dry and it's been in a lot of direct sun. This kind of shape of the leaves is part of what makes it interesting, but there is some sort of like hard pieces in there, and that I think is like a little bit of a succulent disease. Some of my succulents have had issues with. The new leaves look okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I found that the sulfur fungicide really helped my other succulents, so I might give that a soak in the sulfur fungicide for replanting. This one's not too bad. I'm going to leave this alone. So you can see this is the one that was a cutting, and there's all its new roots, and it's nice and dainty, and the leaves look okay. It just looks thirsty. Now this one, obviously there's something going on with the stem. So one thing you'll notice, a lot of succulent arrangements start to look bad because the stems get really long and extended. That's usually a sign of not enough light. And the stems are reaching out really long to try and get more light. In this case, the stem died and it created a new place for the plant to get some roots. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna keep those roots, and I'm gonna trim this, and I'm gonna wash it off, and I'm gonna plant that as it is. So I feel like I should say that if your succulent arrangement is starting to look bad, it's really normal. It's not you, it's not like you have a black thumb. It's just they're growing plants and they're not gonna stay the same. So don't be hard on yourself at all. if your succulents start looking bad in an arrangement, especially one that you've bought. So this one, again, it needed a little bit more room. This is a really beautiful echeveria, but it's definitely got some pest issues. I'm gonna remove these dry leaves and also these bottom leaves to repropagate, to help with the airflow. I'm just gonna remove these bottom leaves. See, there's something funky going on here, so I feel like if I remove these leaves, we can get closer to whatever the issue is. And this is a perfect candidate for repropagating. And if you look at this from here, you can't see any of these bottom leaves. So I'm gonna just remove them. It'll make the plant healthier when I replant it. I feel like that's pretty good for now. Because this one I will replant. This is another one that has some serious issues going on. I'm gonna remove this bottom soil, remove these dead leaves. And with this one definitely needs to go to plant rehab. Another common issue with succulents is edema. So some of these look a little bit like edema, which is usually a sign of overwatering. On one hand, I could say it could be that, except I don't really water these very often, so I'm not so certain it's that. I'd say it's more of some kind of fungal or pest issue, like perhaps scale. But if you look in there, there's just such bad mealybug infestation. Some of these leaves could probably get repropagated. When your succulents aren't looking good, just don't be afraid to take them apart. They're pretty resilient, and they're probably more likely to do better if you take them apart, remove all the dead and diseased and pest infected pieces, and let it dry out and either repropagate or just heal itself. This poor plant. So now that brings us to big boy here, which does look pretty healthy. We're just going to remove all these bottom leaves and kind of break apart the soil around the roots. A lot of this is the soil that it came in. This is just a usual part of echeveria maintenance, is pulling off the bottom leaves. There's a little bit of mealybugs on there. We'll see if we can repropagate these, but this is the farina I was talking about. It's sort of a sunscreen for plants. It's a protective coating, and once it's rubbed off, it doesn't come back. So you want to be really careful when you're handling a plant like this. You can see I've already rubbed off some of those bottom leaves. Just want to be careful with those. That's why I'm not touching the top of the plant. But some of these bottom leaves we're going to remove because they're going to come off eventually. Anyways, we might as well try and propagate them while we have this out of the soil. This one is a little too old for propagating. But this one is nice and firm and healthy. And we're in here, I can see mealybugs in there. So even with a lot of these bottom leaves removed, I still have a full plant. I'm gonna give it another once over. I really want to douse this and remove any potential mealybugs. You can actually see where this plant was a cutting. This was a cutting and it rooted. So this is one of the echeverias I am going to repot. I covered it in isopropyl alcohol. I'm just gonna rinse it off with water and then it should be good to go. So now all the kind of excess soil is removed and any isopropyl alcohol is ready to plant. So these are my cleaned up succulents. I had a few others that are not going to go back in this arrangement. Here's my leaves, and now we will just start filling in the soil and replanting these. We're going to add some fresh cactus mix here, and I use an organic cactus and succulent potting mix. This is one of my favorite cactus and succulent mixes. It's got a lot of pieces of pumice. It's got sand. There's organic material. There's sort of like little bits of shredded bark, but it's super well draining, and this pumice just allows moisture to enter the roots, but also not to sit and stick in standing water. One of the problems succulents can have is being overwatered. Aside from rot, one issue that succulents can get is something called edema. There are little dots that are on some of the leaves. I don't know, some of my leaves looked like they may have had some edema issues or cracking. A lot of times that comes from just the conditions not being ideal. So when you are resetting a succulent arrangement, it's really important to look at your succulents, see what they look like, see if there's any issues, and that way going forward you can correct them. I'm gonna fill this almost all the way to the top because we've removed so much soil from our succulents. There's a little bit of roots, but they're gonna sit almost all the way to the top. I'm also mixing it up with the other soil, and then I'll keep most of the new soil up on top once I've done this little bit of mixing here. So my soil is all the way up to the top, and I'm of course going to start with our largest succulent here. And since I removed most of the soil, I'm just going to add it here. And since I rinsed this off, I'm not going to water this because it's just received a lot of water on its roots. And I'm just going to kind of gently place it in here. Not too worried about the roots, but I'm gonna kind of make sure the roots are covered. I can use my tools, and I'm looking in under here and I can see the stem. There's actually some roots sticking out, so I'm gonna place those back under. I'm being really gentle. I don't want to put my fingerprints on the farina, and I'm putting the soil all the way up to the stem, as more roots can come out that way. I mean, if you look at it, this is like taking up the whole pot. So I don't want to add too much more. That's what happened before. They were all a lot smaller when I first created this arrangement, and they've grown much bigger. So for example, this one's pretty big. I'm just going to put this one here on the side here. And I don't know if I'm going to add any others. Just put the roots in, and gently putting it in there. And already my soil has settled down a little bit. I might add some more soil. I do want to be a bit careful as well because I don't really want the leaves sitting on the soil either. Them a little bit above the soil, protect them from pests and moisture. So I did have this one and this one already in here. Again, this one's really big. I had a little more room on this side, so I actually might push this one over to the side here. They'll get bigger. So everything's planted up. I have some holes in here where I'm going to add a little bit more soil, but I'm not going to add any more in addition to this. Since it is looking a little bit sparse, I can add more decorative items such as a pretty rock or some more of those like decorative gravel. So I'm going to add some decorations to make it look good, but I'm not going to fill it in with any more plants. This is another great tool for working with succulents and working with potting arrangements. It's a little tiny scooper. You can kind of direct the soil exactly where you want it. I went back and I realized as well, I have some cute little sedum, like little mini sedum, and I had this in the original arrangement and it dried out. It had mealybugs, so I removed it. But I found some more that doesn't seem to have pests. Like I said, it's a living, breathing arrangement. And I'm just gonna stick these in. These are just cuttings, no roots. They will root. And once they root, they do tend to kind of fill in and fall in a really nice way. So I'm gonna put some of those ones there, here. All of these plants are pretty easy to find in most nurseries or even like Home Depot. So I bought a big tray of sedum years ago and I've planted it up and it just keeps propagating and regrowing itself. And I've had it over and over and over for arrangements. So all of these little pieces, I just stick them straight into the soil. See, it's just like a little cutting. It will start to root. I do have little areas that are kind of empty. I have this is actually succulent soil, if you could call it that. It's just different types of lava rock and pumice, and I'm just going to add it to the side. It's got some nice colors, but then it also acts a little bit like a soil supplement. So I'm gonna kind of stick it on there, but then move them around. Kind of help keep some of these lower leaves out of the wet soil. So I have reset my whole succulent arrangement. I have removed any dead leaves or any leaves that weren't looking good. I cleaned up the roots. I added some decorative sedum as well as gravel to cover up the soil and make it look a little bit better. I've also dealt with all the pest issues that this plant was having, and I've also, with all the leaves that I removed, I have set them in a separate propagation tray, and hopefully we can get some new plants out of this. We shall see. I have also reset and rearranged this smaller succulent arrangement. So I'm now going to water my succulent. Apologies for the funny sound. I have kind of an air pump watering nozzle. So I am going to water my succulent. I'm gonna not water the leaves. I'm gonna water straight into the soil. That's why a little watering nozzle like this is really great for this type of thing. You can really get in there. And when you have succulents and you haven't watered them in a while, if the soil is really dry, it's a really good idea to really saturate that soil. You might water a little more sparingly if your container does not have drainage. Don't give that kind of container a soak, but this one has a drainage hole. So I know with the combination of that and my cactus succulent mixed soil, this won't get overwatered. And these sedums were just cuttings. They don't have roots, and it's okay to water them as long as they have calloused over. That's another thing with all succulents, is be careful of rot. Give it a day or two. So you may have noticed I have an outfit change. It's actually been 4 days since I started this video, and now 4 days later, I'm giving everything a water. And then this plant should be happy for several weeks. I shouldn't have to water it for at least, I'd say 2 weeks, maybe 3. Having a soil cover like this gravel is also great because it helps retain the moisture. But it's porous, so it won't get overly soaked. Now, one question I am always asked is, do I water my leaf propagations? And for the most part, I don't. This is just in a little tray. There's no drainage. It's just on soil. But you know, if it's warm, there might be no harm in giving it a small little misting just to send a signal to those leaves that they can start growing roots. But I'm really gonna leave this alone and keep this pretty dry. And I'm also gonna make sure and keep this in a shady location. I do not wanna put this in the direct sun. It will just burn up and it will completely die, and all these leaves will just go to waste. So for this succulent tray, I've just simply taken those leaves, the ones that looked healthy and complete and kind of plump, and I've just rested them on top of the soil. They will start to grow either roots or little buds or both, hopefully, Eventually those leaves will start to grow little buds like this. This is actually the echeveria that is in that arrangement when it broke. Here is the broken stem, which I replanted, and it's growing new buds. And then I took a lot of the excess leaves, placed them in this pot, and as you can see, almost all of them have either grown roots or buds. And then as for the succulents I removed from the other arrangements, I'm keeping them. I'm just gonna put them into my succulent rehab. So here is my arrangement. It's done, it's watered. There's my sedum. This is not even in the planter. Oh, there's already a root. Just gonna pop that back in there, and it's looking really good. So this is my smaller arrangement, also looking a lot happier and healthier. Really happy with that. So those are my tips for repotting a succulent arrangement when they're starting to look a little bit bad. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. I love replying to everybody's comments. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok, and of course, subscribe.